Imagine an empire, one of the most powerful the world had ever seen, suddenly vanishing from the face of the earth. No epic battles, no clear signs of invasion, just a silent, creeping collapse that left behind ghost cities and a puzzle that has stumped historians for centuries. This isn't a fantasy novel. This is the real story of the Bronze Age collapse, and specifically, the fall of the mighty Hittite Empire. Around 1200 BC, something catastrophic happened. Across the eastern Mediterranean and the Near East, great civilizations that had flourished for centuries, the Mycenaeans in Greece, the Egyptians of the New Kingdom, and the Hittites in Anatolia, were all thrown into chaos. But while some, like Egypt, managed to cling on, the Hittite Empire, a superpower that once went toe-to-toe with Ramesses the Great, simply evaporated. What could possibly topple such a titan? Let's set the scene. The Hittites were a force to be reckoned with. Based in what is now modern-day Turkey, their empire stretched across a vast territory. They were master ironworkers, a skill that gave them a significant military advantage. Their chariots were legendary, and their legal codes were surprisingly advanced for the time. They built magnificent cities, like their capital Hattusa, a fortress protected by massive stone walls and adorned with iconic lion gates. For over 400 years, they were a cornerstone of the ancient world, a hub of trade, diplomacy, and power. They signed the world's first known peace treaty with the Egyptians after the Battle of Kadesh. They seemed invincible. And then, in the blink of an eye, historically speaking, they were gone. The sprawling city of Hattusa was abandoned and burned. Other Hittite cities met a similar fate. The sophisticated writing system, the cuneiform script they used for all their records, disappeared. It was as if someone had hit the delete button on an entire civilization. For a long time, the Hittites were almost forgotten, a mere footnote in biblical texts, until archaeologists in the 19th and 20th centuries began to unearth their lost cities, revealing the true scale of their power and the profound mystery of their disappearance. So, what happened? This is where it gets really interesting, because there isn't one simple answer. Historians and archaeologists have a list of suspects, but no single one seems to be the smoking gun. It's more like a perfect storm of disasters, a cascade of crises that overwhelmed the empire. Let's start with suspect number one, climate change. Yes, even 3,200 years ago. Scientific evidence from tree rings and pollen samples suggests that the entire region was hit by a prolonged and severe drought around this time. For an empire heavily reliant on agriculture, this would have been devastating. Less rain meant failed harvests. Failed harvests meant widespread famine. Imagine a government trying to control a vast, hungry population. The social fabric would begin to tear apart. We have desperate letters from the last Hittite king to his counterparts, begging for grain shipments. One letter to the ruler of Ugarit, a vassal state, reads, "It is a matter of life and death." This wasn't a minor dry spell. It was an existential threat. But famine alone might not have been enough to destroy the Hittites. This brings us to suspect number two, the Sea Peoples. This is one of history's greatest villains, or maybe just a convenient scapegoat. Egyptian records from the time speak of a mysterious confederation of invaders who swept in from the sea, laying waste to everything in their path. Pharaoh Ramesses III inscribed on his temple walls that no land could stand before their arms. They are blamed for destroying cities all along the coast, from Anatolia to the Levant. Who are these Sea Peoples? We don't really know. Their names are Strange the Peliset, the Jeker, the Shurden. Some scholars believe they were displaced peoples, perhaps from the Aegean or southern Europe, themselves driven from their homes by the same climate change and famine that was plaguing the Hittites. They weren't a unified army, but a migrating wave of desperate, hungry, and violent refugees. Archaeological evidence shows destruction layers at many coastal cities that line up with this timeline. So, were the Hittites overrun by these mysterious raiders? It's a compelling theory. An empire weakened by internal strife and hunger would be a prime target for opportunistic attacks. However, the Sea People's theory has its problems. Most of their attacks were coastal, but the Hittite heartland was deep inland. While they certainly could have disrupted crucial trade routes and coastal vassal states, it's as hard to see how they alone could have marched hundreds of miles inland to sack the heavily fortified capital of Hattusa. This leads us to suspect number 3, internal rebellion and system collapse. An empire is a complex machine. It needs food, resources, a functioning bureaucracy, and the loyalty of its people. The Hittite system was highly centralized around the king. What if the machine just broke down? The drought and famine would have put immense pressure on the state. The king, who was seen as the intermediary with the gods, might have lost his legitimacy in the eyes of the people when the rains failed and the harvests withered. Local lords and vassal states, seeing the central government weaken, might have decided to break away. Why send tribute to a failing king when you need to feed your own people? This could have triggered a domino effect of civil wars and uprisings. The empire might not have been destroyed from the outside, but instead it may have simply unraveled from within. The burning of Hattusa could have been the final act of a civil war or a popular uprising, not an invasion by a foreign army. This system's collapse theory is very popular today because it explains how a powerful state can disintegrate so quickly without a single obvious cause. And there's another piece to this puzzle: earthquakes. The region of Anatolia is seismically active. Some archaeologists point to evidence of major earthquake damage in several Hittite cities around the time of the collapse. Imagine this scenario. A severe drought causes famine, which in turn leads to social unrest and political instability. The vital sea trade routes are being raided by the Sea Peoples, cutting off supplies of grain and copper. And then, a series of massive earthquakes levels your major cities. Any one of these events would be a crisis. All of them happening at once? It's a recipe for total societal collapse. So, we have a multi-layered mystery. Was it a climate catastrophe that starved the empire to death? Was it a violent invasion by the enigmatic Sea Peoples? Or did the empire simply rot from the inside, collapsing under its own weight? The truth is likely a combination of all these factors. The Hittite Empire wasn't felled by a single blow, but was weakened by 1,000 cuts. The drought created the initial vulnerability, the internal rebellions fractured its power, and opportunistic invaders like the Sea Peoples delivered the final fatal strikes to an already dying giant. The result was a dark age. Across the region, cities were abandoned, literacy was lost, and trade networks vanished. It took centuries for civilization in the area to recover, and the fall of the Hittites left a power vacuum that would eventually be filled by new peoples and new empires, like the Assyrians and the Phrygians. What is so fascinating is that this story from over 3,000 years ago holds a powerful warning for us today. We see complex, globalized systems facing unprecedented challenges: climate change, economic instability, mass migrations. The story of the Hittites shows how quickly a seemingly stable and powerful civilization can crumble when faced with a perfect storm of crisis. It reminds us that progress is not guaranteed, and that the foundations of our own world may be more fragile than we think. The mystery of the Hittite Empire's fall isn't just an ancient puzzle. It's a timeless lesson in the fragility of civilization. And as we uncover more clues from the dust of Anatolia, we get a clearer picture not only of their world, but also of the forces that shape our own. So, what do you think was the main cause? The merciless environment, the mysterious invaders, or the people turning against their own rulers? Let me know your theory down in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. If you enjoy diving into history's greatest unsolved mysteries like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next investigation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.